Interesting, isn't it? Welcome back. That was Prince Harry in yet another interview that was talking on Good Morning America. Well, joining me now is relationship expert Paul Carrick Brunson. Paul, being a step-parent is never easy, is it? And being a step-child is never easy, especially if there's been adultery or there's been, emotions are very high. Clearly, it's a fractured family. Your advice to Harry, to William, to Charles, to all concerned, what would you be saying to them now?
Well, I tell you what, well, first, good morning to you, Lorraine. That's a big question that you've asked me right out the gate. I tell you what, one thing that we have to understand is what we're seeing right now is we're seeing trauma. Let's call it what it is, trauma. And what trauma is it is our emotional response to a distressing event. And this is precisely what's happening. But what we also have to understand is there's what's called complex trauma. Complex trauma is when you have emotional responses to many distressing events. And we see complex trauma happening. And then on top of all of that, trauma also passes through us genetically and through each generation. So we have to understand what we're looking at before we can begin dealing with it. With regard to stepmothers and stepfathers, I like the term bonus fathers and bonus mothers, not just step. I think step puts a negative connotation around it. And the most important thing we can do with our bonus fathers and bonus mothers is spend time with them and find common ground with them.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because, sitting down and talking is so important, isn't it? And talking, and really being open. But reading the book, as I did yesterday, it just seems that this family can't do that, even when they're in the same room together. It's like they don't want the older generation, like when the Queen, when she was still alive, and Prince Charles, they don't want conflict. They don't want anything like that. So it's actually, that's where you can tell where his frustration is, because he wants to talk things through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think your observation is spot on, Lorraine. We have to realize that many families suffer through this. Up to a third of all families have an estranged member who can't have conversation with. And we have to realize that the best way to get through that is to bring someone in. This family needs a mediator. There's no doubt about that. And many other families need mediators. You need someone that both parties respect that can help you to work through whatever the issues are.
No, that's true. I think they need someone like you, Paul, because then people can actually start to talk. I mean, I always thought Princess Anne would have been a great mediator because for a long time she was the spare. She was there was Charles and then there was her, and she's dealt with the whole kind of royal craziness in a very good way, in the fact that she didn't give her children titles. And I just think maybe there's something there. I don't know, maybe it's too late. I don't know. No.
One thing I will say is it is never too late. It is never too late, especially if you can identify what the reason is. And I think for this family, we have to understand that the reason, their purpose, is the next generation, right? There are younger kids that are coming up. And if they can help to reconcile now, they can make the next generation coming up that much stronger.
Well, looking at the book, there was something that nobody's really picked up on this, and it was very interesting because obviously there's a sort of cultural difference between Americans and, with the greatest of respect, but between Americans and Brits, there just is. And he writes about the fact when him and Meghan had a fight, he said something that she took the wrong way. He says it was partly a cultural difference. And you know what she did, which I think was really good? She just walked away, went upstairs, and then he came back and, she said to him, I'm not being spoken to like that. Not in a confrontational way. She just said, no, that's not how you do it. I think that was a really good way to handle that spat.
Yes. You know what, Lorraine, what I love about the book is actually the references and the showcasing of the difference of cultures. I think and I'll speak for most Americans here and say that we think we know what British culture is. We have no idea. we have no idea. Working in the UK, what I realized is that Brits are very pragmatic on a whole, very pragmatic. Whereas in the US, I think we're very optimistic. We're a bit entitled, and it ranges. Americans, we get everything wrong, even teeth. Even teeth. I'll say that most Americans think Brits have terrible teeth. But you know what it turns out, Lorraine? It turns out that Brits have better teeth than Americans, less cavities, and less tooth decay than Americans. So we get it all wrong here in America.
Oh, it's brilliant. I didn't think that the conversation would go on to that, Paul, but it has, and that's fine. Listen, thank you, as always, for your thoughts. I really appreciate it, and I know we'll be talking about this again in the ramifications for the royal family. Thank you. We can now rejoin Princess Diana's biographer, Andrew Morton. Andrew, sorry about that. We had a wee glitch in the system, but I really just wanted to ask you about what you think the damage, if any, that has been done to the institution. What do you think?
Well, I think that this is a matter for, it'll be interesting to see what opinion polls say, because Harry does take a pop at William, at Catherine, at Camilla and Charles, the King and Queen. So this is the most senior member of the royal family ever to attack them in this way. Diana, of course, was the future queen, and she was the first one, you could argue, who went down that road.
And I don't think this would have happened had she still been with us. We wouldn't be sitting here talking like this, would we?
No, we wouldn't. We'd probably be in America, because that's probably where she would have ended up anyway. And it does seem to me that Harry is trying to replicate her life and commune with Diana through that. I mean, he's contacted psychics. He's gone through the tunnel on his with a chauffeur to experience it. So he's never really left her, and he's never given up the pain of losing her. And I think, you talked about hugging earlier on, and it's one of the things that Diana used to say, I hug my children to death. And it's interesting that she had more of an American sensibility at that time than a British one.
Andrew, thank you. It's just terribly sad, isn't it? The whole thing is just very, very sad, and I think all anybody wants for him is for him to be happy, and I really, really hope that he is. But I think we've all kind of thought,
he's got to rid himself of certain illusions about his mother and about his royal life before he can move forward.
No, that's it. It's all about moving on, isn't it? Hopefully he can do that. Thank you so much for joining us, and sorry about the sound problems. Thank you.